Hello, and welcome to Into the MoTaverse. This is a podcast hosted by myself, Rosie Sherry, the founder and CEO of the MoTaverse, or Ministry of Testing. We're here to explore new ideas, expand the MoTaverse, as we like to say, and connect with the people in the MoTaverse. And today we have Shawn Vernier with us. He's a quality advocate from Canada. I was just joking that he's our first Canadian on the podcast. So I'm keen to celebrate that, look for the unique points. And it's the first time Shawn and I have ever spoken. We connected in the MoTaverse, and I was keen to connect and learn more about things he's up to. But yeah, welcome, Shawn.
Hi, thanks for having me so much, and thanks for sort of picking me out of the bunch. You were very enthusiastic after going over my LinkedIn profile, which was great. This year, I do have sort of a goal for myself to build out more professional community in my life. I've been a part of the Ministry of Testing for a couple of years, and now I'm just like, all right, time to double down in on this and really take part in the professional community that I want to surround myself with. The Ministry of Testing just seems very open to new ideas and open to building that community aspect. And I'm like, yes, let me get in on this. Let me help you. Help me help you.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. And I guess as we're building the MoTaverse and as we're kind of doubling down on the platform side of things, and we're actively looking for people to speak to, actively trying to understand who people are, and I guess seeing community in a different way, but realizing that we have to do more outreach, or we want to do more outreach, because there's so many people like yourselves that perhaps haven't had the time or the opportunity or knowledge that they can raise their hand and share whatever experiences you might have to share. So yeah, I'm pretty excited from that aspect about the platform we're building and making it easier, I guess, to access the knowledge of the people and who you are and what you're doing and what your story is. And I guess that's one of the goals. And yeah, MOT profiles have been pretty good for that. So now we get a good glimpse of people, and the more you participate, the easier it is for everyone to get to know you. So we hope we can build upon that. But yeah, what's your history? I'd love to get a brief intro into who are you? What's your interest in quality and testing? How did you get into testing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, double fun fact, I'm actually a dual citizen of America and Canada. I was born and raised in America, immigrated to Canada, and now have citizenship here as well. So I started my career down in a tiny town in Virginia. I got a computer science and information technology degree from a college. And then I went into software development. I was actually a software developer for a couple of years, and then I kind of realized it wasn't really for me. There was too much keeping up with whatever latest tech stack that was coming down. I'm just like, I like to use my weekends not learning new programming languages. But at the same time, my managers sort of realized that unlike some of my other junior developers, I was asking a lot of questions, right? Whenever they would give me a task, I was like, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we building this way? I would push back on stuff. And they're like, you know what you would be really suited for, because you have a coding background, is we're starting up this brand new thing that we've never heard of called test automation. And we want someone to write the architecture for that. So do you want to be the head of test automation? And figure out what that even means? And I'm like, sure, yeah, that sounds cool. So that's how I got pulled into a more quality direction. And over the years, actually, I've become more engrossed in doing overall, I guess today we would call it quality engineering, right? The overall architecture of all aspects of quality of the system, whether that's manual testing or test automation or anything that leads to a better product outcome, both internally for all stakeholders, both internally and externally. It's been a very fascinating journey. I know, like a lot of times, quality is seen as like the stepping stone into software development because people want to be a software engineer, and that's usually the pipeline is getting in quality because it's easier, and then transition into being, the more higher profile developer. But I think it is a pipeline in the opposite direction as well, because I think there's a specific mindset that goes into quality and quality engineering that you can learn it. It's a skill, but there is sort of a talent aspect where people tend to be a little better suited towards one or the other, depending on how your life and community shapes you, right?
Absolutely. I'm curious, like how have you seen it develop or change over time? Because sometimes I think, like, when we talk about things in tech and testing and quality, it's really easy to kind of think of, assume that things are happening. Like, back in the days, like, everyone needs to learn test automation. Everyone's doing test automation. But then, like, more recently in the past year, I was speaking to people and trying to dive into their actual experiences, and is that yes, test automation was happening, but not nearly as much as it felt like people were talking about it, or like the more test automation would get more limelight at conferences or in articles and stuff like that, and therefore we assume that, oh my god, everyone's doing this, so we have to do it. So, when I talk to people, I like to ask, like, what is your actual experience, and like, how has like test automation changed for you over the years? And I guess the shift, like you say, to quality engineering, like, what does that look like for you at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I will say first off that I love that we have this term of quality engineering now. That's a fantastic term. Back in the early days, like we started calling ourselves quality advocates, to move away from quality assurance, because as I like to say, the one thing I cannot do is assure quality. It's not in my scope. That's up to stakeholders, right? That's up to
Yeah.
managers and developers and whatever. So I love the quality advocate moniker. Now we just have quality engineering, which is a great umbrella term, right? But yeah, so in terms of my own experience and my own perceptions and career, the hype around new technologies and new tools. I mean, it's pervasive all throughout software engineering, right? For quality, that was test automation was a thing, and you saw a bunch of different frameworks come up and die away over time. And now AI is taking over the universe at the moment, and I have opinions on that. I'm an AI skeptic, and I think that's honestly, like, over time, one thing I've learned is always being skeptical of new technology, because, as you said, we've sort of seen that with test automation in the past, where there was all this hype around it. It's like, oh my god, everyone's doing it, and we have to do it because everyone's doing it. And then you take a look back and you're like, was everyone doing it, and did it really pay out the promise of what these people were saying it was going to do, right? I do think part of being a quality engineer is being skeptical of things, right? Because that's what we do. The PM writes a ticket from a customer perspective. The software developer, does the coding for that. And our job is to look at that ticket and be like, does it really work like that? Should it really work like that, right? Maybe it does. If it does, great. But if it doesn't, that's our job, to find those gaps, right? To be that skeptical voice in the room. But yeah, it has been a very interesting journey to watch, because I did come in from the engineering side, and I did see test automation as my first foray into it. There was a lot of promise of that kicking off, and then it kind of worked. It's an excellent tool to use, and a lot of different frameworks have come and gone over time, but it never paid off, right? It was never like, oh, like, we're gonna get rid of quality, right? Everything's just gonna be automated now. Some organizations tried that. Some organizations are still trying that. I suppose best of luck to them. I don't know about other people, but I tend to spend most of my time maintaining frameworks for not a huge amount of value, right?
That, that's interesting within itself, right? And I think that's like almost like, at least some of the conversations that we need to have is like the maintenance of test automation, and is it bringing the value, or is it actually creating work that we could perhaps be spending time elsewhere, for better value, I guess, for the business. And I want to raise those stories up if they exist. Obviously, my my gut says that they exist, but it's like, is it the actual reality, and what do we do about it if it is the reality? It's like, it's that case of, oh, we've invested so much into this, we can't get rid of it because of that sunk cost
Right.
fallacy kind of thing. But it's just like almost like if you could start from scratch maybe, and like, like how you say you're excited about like quality engineering as a term or as a philosophy, it feels more exciting. It's like, would you start it with test automation in mind, or how would you like almost think about quality engineering? Like, if you could start from scratch, what what would it look like?
Ooh, that's a big, broad question. How much time do we have on this podcast?
Not enough time.
Not enough time to
No,
answer that one.
no.
So, I do think that, and one of the reasons I'm skeptical of any organization that pushes really high rates of test automation, same reason I'm skeptical of AI, is it's attempting to push the human out, right? It's attempting to limit the amount of human work to create sort of a factory mindset of humans are just there to massage the machines, right? And we know that software doesn't work that way. That's great if you're building a car on an assembly line, right? But it's not good if you're trying to create a unique experience through something that is literally written in a human language. I mean, programming languages are human written. Most of them are in English, as far as I'm aware, right? Broken English, maybe, but so you're creating something by humans for humans in a human language. That's not an assembly line, right? You can't do that on an assembly line. You need people asking questions, designing the software, building the software. You're never going to be able to put that on an assembly line, not if you want something coming out the other end that is of quality and that is unique, something that people are going to be willing to pay for. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, right? Is to sell software. That's what a lot of stakeholders like. So I think I lost the plot a little bit in my head there, but I refer back. So one of the things I like to refer back to is Fred Brooks' Mythical Man Month, which was written, I think, in 1970-ish, and it was written on his software engineering experience from projects in the 60s. And he was a project lead for a couple of large projects, and he writes about those experiences. And it is remarkable to me how much that book is still applicable to your day-to-day today, right? A lot of the stuff that he writes about is like, we sort of face this exact same problem, but in just different terminology. So one of the articles and what I sort of came prepared to talk about today was through documentation aspect. And one of the sections of that book is he talks about how to do product documentation, how to keep all of the stakeholders across a large engineering project aligned, right? And that's a lot of what we do in QA, is making sure stakeholders are aligned, making sure everyone knows what they're building and that they're building it correctly, right? That's an aspect of quality that we sort of help shepherd in the process. And one of the ways he talks about doing that, his big innovation is 3-ring binders. And it's 3-ring binders. He advocates that every person involved in the project should have a 3-ring binder on their desk. And everyone is responsible for documenting whatever they're doing throughout the week. And at the end of the week, there is someone who is designated with collecting all of the new documentation, photocopying it, and going around and inserting this new documentation into the 3-ring binder, either removing parts that don't need to be there anymore or inserting parts that are new to the product. And
Okay.
the reason he uses a 3-ring binder is because it's version control. It's source controlling it, right? You can insert and remove. You can merge changes. He's basically just talking about Git in 3-ring binder terms back in the 60s, right? Like,
that's funny. And I guess, like, what would you say, like, is the modern day version of the 3-ring binder? You mentioned Git, but I guess there's other aspects of things, like, there's this, knowledge can get lost quite easily, or knowledge today, a lot of stuff gets said in Slack, for example. What does, I guess, a modern day good documented angle for products look like? Or is it, real world stories, I guess. It's like, there's the ideal world, and then there's the reality as well of how it actually looks like. it's easy to say that, oh, this is going to get updated by someone, but does it actually get updated?
Right, right. So there's no one right answer to that, right?
Yeah.
Where we live in a world where a lot of communication is extremely ephemeral. Excuse me. Um, and our documentation has to be fragmented, right? Our product documentation, we kind of like in some sort of management system like Jira. I'll use Jira and Confluence. Those are the tools I'm familiar with. Those are sort of like the industrial standard these days, as far as I can tell. But we like our product to be documented in say Jira, right? We have the acceptance criteria, we have the requirements documents. Those tend to be in some sort of like story or epic or whatever format. We have long form documentation in things like Confluence, some sort of wiki style, where people can go in and edit longer form documents. Or you could even use Google Drive, something like that, which again has revision history in it. Which is great from the olden days of trying to email spreadsheets and Word documents around to each other. But yeah, we also live in a world where we do a lot of ephemeral communication through, say, Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever your instant messenger is. And sometimes really big, important decisions can get buried in a reply thread 30 pages down in a channel that only 3 people are following. How do you circle that back? How do you connect that in with the rest of your product documentation? And it's difficult. And a lot of organizations, like, that's sort of the gap, right? And it is about, I think, just having someone that is aware, like agreeing on a source of truth. Whatever system you want, find your source of truth and make sure that it is part of your process, that someone circles back and updates those sources of truth whenever conversations are had, such that the documentation isn't lost. And if you want to use, like, we have a lot of AI tools these days that plug into everything because they love to get their tentacles sticky in all of your systems, use that, right? Like, if your AI tool can record a Slack huddle, right, or whatever, and can then link that back to a Jira ticket and automatically upload that as a comment, that's actually awesome, right?
I love how you called it sticky tentacles. AI is sticky tentacles. I can't even say it. That's funny. It reminds me of a conversation I had with a guy called Nigel. It's one of our leading with quality conversations in the MoTaverse. And he spoke about test artifacts as documentation, as like a final source of truth, and that test artifacts tend to he believes that it's what lasts longest in the product, so it will last longer than the code because it's that source of truth, that this is an agreed upon way of what the product is supposed to do. So yeah, I think that's interesting, but I wonder, like, how does documentation actually show up for you? Is like test artifacts one angle of it, or what would you say actually exists in like your current context or recent context?
Yeah. Yeah, test artifacts is a very interesting one to talk about. So I like test strategy documents, like the larger, like, whole feature or whole, like, area documents of here's how we're testing this and here's the risk analysis, that kind of stuff. Test cases are a little weird for me because it tends to be a lot of overhead that tends to not really see reality, right? You write a bunch of test cases based on acceptance criteria. Those acceptance criteria change, and you tend to just forget going back to update the test cases because things are moving too quickly, right? You're always at the end of the pipeline. You don't have the time. You're too busy doing the testing versus updating the documentation. One test artifact that I do believe very heavily in, though, is test automation, right? Because that is truth as code. You're having something that is running repeatedly, hopefully at least once a day, if not more frequently in a lot of organizations. And those tests pass or fail, right? They give you a very clear indication when the product has deviated from previous functionality. Maybe you intended that deviation. Maybe that deviation is part of a feature requirement and you need to update the test. Maybe it's not, right? And that's where those tests have value. That's where those tests are telling you, hey, you changed something that you didn't mean to change. There's some aspect of the product you didn't take into account when you made these code changes or these design changes, and you need to go back and rethink your life, basically. Which is also, side note, why I'm a stickler for test automation cases. I won't write test automation if I don't have either specifications for the product that I'm writing for, or at the very least, a very good understanding of what tests I'm writing. Because what you don't want is to make an assumption. You don't want to test by assumption, as I call it. Because, for example, if I look at the product and I say, oh, well, if I do X, I get Y output. So I'm just going to assume Y is correct. I'm going to put that in test automation. And hooray, the test automation passes. Look, the product works fine. But what if that was a bug? What if the product wasn't supposed to do Y? Now everyone thinks Y is correct when it never was, right?
Absolutely. I wonder, like, is there, potentially like as a way to like value test automation better is and almost like not have separate test cases. Obviously, it depends, but like I always feel like test cases tend to get out of date quite quickly, and they're not maintained because it's just like often it's so much to maintain that they don't get maintained. But maybe as part of automation, that maybe if it was integrated better and seen more as documentation by the whole organization or the product team, then perhaps there's better ways to manage the documentation aspect, the knowledge aspect within that whole process, so that the whole team knows that it has to be up to date. It can't, with manual test cases at least, or those kind of test cases, because of the fact that they're done manually, they can easily be dismissed, right, or not part of the whole process.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just like for me, it's just like I'm trying. I guess like looking to the future, and also like looking to the past, of like getting rid of like practices that we don't want for the future. That like I've been in testing since the year 2000, right? Like my first job was in the year 2000. Testing has changed a lot, right? But some things haven't changed. Like I still feel like there's a lot of manual test cases, for example. And sometimes that has to be the case. It's fair enough. But it's like I just remember designing test cases, and I think it was in like Word documents. But yeah, that kind of stuff, you do it once and no one would ever look at it again, right? And that, as a business owner, I was like, it doesn't feel like a good time of money spent, time spent. So yeah, I just think it's that I'm all about efficiency, and I guess systems thinking, like how the system actually functions, rather than trying to force things in that don't actually work. But yeah, any thoughts or tips or ideas, or how that might apply? It's a bit of a ramble.
No, I totally get it. And actually, I was thinking about this with regards to documentation. I'm gonna tell a bit of a story, a bit of a parable. I love parables. So my street's been under construction for a while, right? They had to close down the street while they were rebuilding water mains, that sort of thing, right? So originally they put up traffic signs that said local traffic only, to deter people from driving down the street. This didn't stop anyone. People continued to drive down the street at full speed. No one cared about the traffic signs. They then put up signage that said road closed. People continued to drive down the street. People just completely ignored the road closed sign. And eventually someone actually got in an accident. They actually collided right outside my front door with a construction truck. Like, how do you miss a construction truck parked in the middle of the road? I don't know. But what they eventually realized was signage wasn't enough. They had to put up physical barricades to block the street that only the construction people and the people that lived on the street could remove. Right. And that's where your test automation lies, right? You can run the tests all you want, you can write all the test cases you want, you can document those all you want. People are going to ignore them if you do not physically enforce that they have to pass, right? You've got to link your test automation into your CI pipeline, right? And it has to block people from merging code, right? You have to fix this. Otherwise, yeah, people will just ignore it or skip the tests or whatever they need to do to get things merged, right? To
Yeah.
get that stuff in. And it's like, well, that's good for you, but it's not good for quality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that makes me wonder, yeah, how do we think about that from a modern perspective, the AI perspective? It's complicated, right? And like
Yeah.
I work on a small product, relatively small product, and yeah, I guess the complexity grows pretty quickly. And yeah, I guess like when I think about it, I'm like, how can we simplify these processes? What can we get rid of? That's like the question that I always keep coming back to. Like MOT is like, it's not strictly quality related, but it is. But like everything we do by simplifying, by breaking down the processes, by questioning like everything we're building, um, it it leads to quality. It leads to a better product. Even things like that I found really interesting recently is just surfacing data, like user activity data, and like data that was there but not very visible, and now it's very visible. It enables us to create a better product because we're like all of a sudden seeing things that are happening. It's like, oh, that's happening, and we didn't even realize. We can do this, or we can do that, or we can improve the experience because we now have access to that data. And I guess that starts to make me think: what is documentation? Is data documentation as well? Or is that a whole different story? I don't know.
It's all good questions. AI is interesting. Like I said, sticky tentacles everywhere, right? It
Yeah,
loves crunching data. It will get a hold of all of your data and then it will crunch it in very interesting, novel ways that you've never thought of. You have to be careful to make sure that it's using the right data and that whatever it is outputting to you is correct and useful, but it will crunch it. It will give you all sorts of interesting insights that you might not have had before. And the other good thing about AI is it is putting a lot of focus on data, data sources, and data hygiene, right? We're never more cognizant than we have been in the last couple of years about making sure whatever data you are gathering is correct and accurate and well formatted, right? Because it
yeah,
has to be, because you need that in order to make good decisions. And the note there is that we always needed good data to make good decisions. We just didn't care as much as we did until more recently. Right? Like,
yeah.
uh,
It's actually interesting because like I never considered data as part of documentation, but now like after this, I'm kind of thinking, no, it is. It is. Obviously there's different types of data, but and I think that's the exciting part about like quality engineering. Like you touched on the beginnings, like isn't it great that we now call it quality engineering? And like I agree because it's like a few years ago I was like calling it testing and quality assurance. I never felt it always felt separate. It always felt like I want to do all these other things that are not quite testing but are related to testing, but I felt like I couldn't do it because it was kind of out of our remit. But now, like we talk about quality engineering, I almost feel empowered, for example, to talk about data because it's like, yes, that's in our remit. We need to understand the data, we need to understand the documentation, we need to understand so many things. But I feel empowered by it because we're calling it quality engineering now. It's like that name shift that makes me feel like no, this is under my remit. Remit. Um, I want to get involved. I want to explore, and I want to help improve the product as a result. And yeah, it's just like the creativity almost as part of that. I think is super interesting. That I I would love for us to be more creative as well, like explore these things because now we are empowered. I feel that's how I feel. I don't know if that's similar to you.
yeah, absolutely. It's much more empowering. I've had a lot more conversations in more recent years where managers or stakeholders are sort of coming to me, and rather than giving me something prescribed, right, like write these test cases or write this test automation, it's more we want to improve the quality, right? And go, like, just do that, right? And I find that part of my job, like whenever I join an organization, is first defining quality, because they don't even have, they're like, we want to improve quality. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And they're like, we don't know. It's like, okay, well, let me define my job for you then, I guess. Which is great. It's very empowering, right? It's there's a clear line of, they know that they want to do better, but they don't know what better looks like. They don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, let me build a roadmap for you. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about including data as part of quality. Let's talk about analytics. Let's talk about various metrics that we can report on. Let's talk about automation, not in a mandate, we need 100% test automation coverage for no reason. We're going to talk about test automation as a tool to accelerate our definition of quality across the organization. And it really is across the organization, right? Like I talked about in the beginning, it's very human, right? You have to talk to the stakeholders, you have to talk to the managers, you have to talk to the software engineers, you have to talk to customers, right? And you have to learn what all these people expect of the system. And then you're sort of I see myself, I shouldn't say you, I see myself as a bastion of all these different people's beliefs, right? They all believe different things, they all want different things. And my job is to bring all those together and to coalesce them, right? And in areas where they can't coalesce, in areas where they're just completely at odds with each other, it's having that conversation, sitting down with them and being like, okay, you're at opposite ends of the spectrum here, and we have to reach a middle ground, right? Who's going to kind of come to the middle with me?
Do you find that companies are getting better at supporting quality engineers from that perspective?
I think it's hit and miss. I think it's really dependent on the organization. I like to think that as a whole, yes, I like to think that we're reaching sort of that stage. AI has sort of blown stuff up. Like, I think we were on a good track a couple years ago, and then AI came along, and now there's a lot of, what do we need quality engineers for? AI will do that. And it's like, oh, this is a big step backwards to where we were. I'd be happy to use this as a tool, much the same way that it took the industry multiple years to get over test automation metrics. It's going to take us a couple years to get over AI-driven stuff, and to treat it as a tool and not as a silver bullet. Again, referencing Fred Brooks. I actually also really like, I'm going to shout out another one of my favorite books, Lessons Learned in Software Testing, by James Block, Ken Kramer, Michael Bolton, who are fantastic personalities, if you're not aware. They have Lessons Learned in Software Testing has an entire chapter on test automation that I've bookmarked extensively. And from recollection, the entire chapter is basically the don'ts of test automation. It's all of like how to do test automation wrong. And then I think like the very last paragraph is like a hint of how to maybe do it right. And this book was written in, I think, like 2010, something like that, like right on the cusp of test automation really becoming a thing. So it was a really funny perspective to read, that even back then, here were some people being like, oh, like there's a bunch of ways this is going to go super wrong for organizations, and there's like one right way to use it.
Absolutely. And I almost feel like, because like exploratory testing, for example, one of the thoughts that's come up in my mind, alongside the test automation angle, is like, it's almost like we could have expanded what exploratory testing could have been in much more depth, but we haven't. And I feel like maybe now is the time to explore what exploratory testing could be, like how powerful it could be. Or with AI, it could almost be so much more powerful, because you could like do AI assisted exploratory testing. That could be super interesting. Or combine it with data, for example. So yeah, I feel like we almost don't talk enough about it, and I believe that if we did, then that would benefit us all. So like when I talk about test automation, I kind of put it down a bit at the moment, but it's not really that I'm against it. It's more that, I love diversity, and it's like, diversity of topics is essential for our industry, I think. And I just want to shine light, I guess, on different areas that people should be thinking more about.
Mhm. And that's what I love, right? I like to talk in terms of context-driven testing and context in quality, and it's what is your context, right? That's going to determine how much test automation you write, if you write any and all, what tools you use, at what layers you put it at, right? Test automation, it's a wonderful tool to have and be familiar with in your career as a quality engineer, but how you use it depends on the organization you're a part of, right? I don't like coming into organizations that have the 100% test automation mandate, because the very first way to break that down is, what does that mean? How are you measuring that, right? And they often don't actually have an answer. They just have a
Yeah,
number, right? And it's like,
yeah,
don't tell me how to do my job, I guess. Like, which is great. As you said, like with quality engineering, right? We have a broader mandate with that term where we can push back on some of those more archaic mandates. With regards to exploratory testing, I completely agree. There's an excellent book called Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson
yeah,
that I absolutely love. It's a short, easy read, but it really gets into like exploratory testing and how to like explore a product, and it will help broaden your mind to the possibilities there. And yeah, like AI is an excellent tool because you can run that in the background while you're exploring the product, and it might pick up on things that you don't notice, right? We're humans, we don't always do things consistently. That's sort of the whole point of exploratory testing. But an AI assistant can sit there in the background and it can notice things in the DOM or in the network request that maybe you don't have open at this moment, and be like, hey, this is throwing a 403. It doesn't seem to be doing anything on the page, but you should be aware this network request is failing for some reason,
yeah,
right? He was
yeah.
an excellent co-pilot, which I guess is where Microsoft's branding comes from.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess like this is making me think, like, just before we jumped on the call, we were talking about community as well, and like through community brings like confidence. I think is a big part of community. What the value of community, what it can bring, and like AI can bring a certain amount of confidence if I guess applied correctly, it can help you explore better, I think, even though I haven't practically applied that myself. It's theory based, but from what I see, it sounds true enough. Um, but yeah, I'd love to hear your stories around community, because you're doing quite a few different things, which I find is very interesting.
I do. So Mr. Testing is sort of my kickoff to professional community. I've had a few false starts over the years, but I'm on board with Mystery Testing now. I'm here. I'm doing the interview. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, like in my life broadly, I am a strong believer in community. I'm a strong believer in sort of the human aspects of life. I'm in a small town here in Southern Ontario, and I do a lot of community event organization. There's a music festival here that I'm on the committee of. There's the Pride committee here that I'm a part of. There's the food bank that I'm a part of. There's various town events, business associations that I'm a part of. I'm kind of all over the place, especially in the summertime. I might disappear for odd stretches of time. But to me, I think you made the comment while I was going over this. You're like, oh, that's like a lot, and it is, and I get that comment a lot. It's like, how do you keep up with all of that? How do you do like all these different organizations? And the trick for me is that I don't see them as different organizations. They all have different perspectives, different avenues to supporting the broader local community here, right? They're all part of this broader community, and they're all driving engagement in that community and a sense of belonging here just through different lenses, different points of view to get there, right? So any organization I'm a part of, that's what I'm looking towards. I'm looking towards, this isn't about this one organization. They're not siloed to me. They're all working towards this common goal of bringing together the community. Um, so same thing in the professional space, right? I'm a big believer in bringing people together and talking through ideas and having those conversations. I think it's those conversations that really drive all aspects of life, right? We've talked a number of times just in terms of organizations, right? A big part of my job is sitting a couple people down in a Zoom call and being like, okay, we need to talk through this requirement because you two have different opinions on what this sentence means, right? Like,
it's amazing how quickly things can be cleared up through a simple conversation, I guess. It's
right.
like, or how well you can get to know people from a simple conversation, which is
Yeah.
partly why I'm doing this. And like, it's like for me to extract, or extract is probably the wrong word, but for me to find out all these things from you in, let's say, a Slack or a forum post, it just wouldn't feel the same, right? So actually just like jumping on a call, which is the best option we have when you're in Canada and I'm in the UK. um, but now I realize, oh, you get out in the summer a lot, so perhaps like the winter time is a good time for us to hang out because we can do things remotely and virtually, and that works. And in the summer, you'll probably be off doing other things, and that's nice to know, right? You get to know people,
Yeah.
and you get to understand like the way of life or the routine, I guess, which helps build community. Um, do you see community as something that's just a part of your life rather than something separate, I guess?
Oh no, it's absolutely it's interwoven in every aspect of my life, and I think it has to be right because the community is really about supporting each other, right? Uh, even professionally, right? There are a number of times throughout my career where I'll be doing something and I'm just sort of like, am I crazy that this is wrong, or am I crazy that this is the right way to go about? And it's important to have people outside of your organization because your organization tends to be a silo of you're doing this because the organization deems that you should be doing it. It's important to broaden that, go out into the professional community and be like, hey, am I crazy? Are we doing this wrong? And to get that feedback from other people with other perspectives, right? And maybe there's nothing you can do about your organization, but at least you'll know that like, oh yeah, okay, we're kind of not doing this best practice way, but you get that sense of peace, that peace of mind about it. Um, and I do think like there's an aspect of community where it comes to supporting each other, where you're not participating in the community just to boost your career, right? This isn't about the number of likes you get on LinkedIn when this podcast goes live and I post the link and I'm like, hey, look at me, I'm on a podcast, right? Like that's great. That's a boost for me, yes. And I'm not going to deny that that's part of my motivation for taking place in a professional community. It's to boost my career. But at the same time, I'm also feeding into that community, right? I'm getting more people engaged in the community space. I'm here talking about my history and my perspectives. Hopefully someone will learn something from this or have a light bulb go off. And maybe it's because you vehemently disagree with me, but that's fine. Guess what? You had a thought based on something I said, right? And that's how community supports each other. It's not selfish, but it's not selfless either.
Yeah.
Right? You're helping yourself by helping others. And that's how we grow. That's how we build community.
Yeah, and I guess like my challenge, if I'm to reflect on building MOT, when it comes to building like a professional community, there's extra challenges involved in the fact that we're trying to do good for the community, but we're also trying to be sustainable, and we're trying to support companies, and we're also trying to support the people. Companies of people and people I kind of see as the same, but different needs. Um, but I guess also in tech, there's this perception of like growth. You must grow, or things must be free, or people question is like why do we have to pay for this when there's YouTube and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess from my perspective, we're trying to find the balance and be creative and build something different that's super valuable and lifts us all up, but also with the acknowledgement that the world is changing at the moment, and I do think community can be at the heart of that. Like, as part of community, we run a conference, but I don't even like calling ourselves like a conference provider. It's just something we do as part of community. And that's what I'm trying to get better at somehow is like we are a community, but because we do things with a community mindset or we're community led, we get to create training, we get to run conferences, we get to do meetups, but it's all part of community and it's all super, super valuable. But yeah, that's just a bit of my rant is like, how can we get better professionally? Because it's kind of like when people talk about community, they think a lot about like the communities that you were originally talking about, like, you know, like food banks and stuff like that, that you're expected to just volunteer your time and do it for free. Whereas with career and tech focused ones, it becomes the lines are a bit blurrier, I guess. But yeah, just my thoughts in my head that happen every single day. And it's like, what does a good community, professional, good tech community look like today? And I'm trying to innovate on that, I guess, through what we're building. But I love it. It's amazing. Like, the fact that I get to talk to you for a living, or anyone is like, this is fun. This is cool.
I kind of envy your job. I would also love to just talk to interesting people for, for a living. But yeah, I honestly think like you're on a good track. Like I like what I'm seeing from my perspective. Like I chose to double down in administrative testing because I do like the direction that I'm seeing here. I think you're doing an excellent job of growing this and creating that community space. And really, like I said, community is about support. And I think the people in administrative testing are very supportive. I think there's a big you don't have to go far to find someone to help you or to broaden your ideas or to have a conversation with, right? And I think that's sort of the main driver is engagement, right? You got to get people actually engaged. And I know, like even for myself, the reason I put off being engaged in professional spaces for so long is because I was just burned out at my job, right? Like I do this
Yeah.
for a living. I get paid to do this. When I clock out at the end of the day, I don't want to do more of it. Like
Yeah.
so it's really hard to find that drive to engage in your profession outside of your paycheck. Um, and for me, the big kicker was separating like my career and my job from the professional aspect of the space, right? There's my job and then there's my profession. And how I sort of help delineate the two
Yeah.
is there's a lot that I'm going to learn in a professional space that I am never going to be given the time or the budget to apply in my job, at least whatever
Yeah.
current job I might have, because I'm just like, well, my job is sort of set, right? I have my frameworks, I have my tools, I have my job description, that's fixed. This is a wonderful idea. I'm absolutely glad that I learned this from this article that I just read, but it's kind of useless to me right now.
Yeah.
Right? And it's realizing that that thing that is useless to you right now is going to be very valuable to you 2 years from now when you're back on the job hunt, right? To your next
Yeah.
job. And you have to stay engaged to grow yourself. And the professional space, professional community space is where you grow yourself, right? And
Yeah.
by the time you need that growth, by the time you recognize, oh, like crap, I really should have learned this 2 years ago, it's 2 years too late, right? Like
Exactly. And even just being aware of things that people are talking about so that you can have the conversations or you can know that something exists is valuable within itself without like knowing, like without being an expert on it. But I love what you say about separating the profession and the job and the need to invest in your profession, at least some of the time. And I've definitely spoken to people who are like going to meetups and like, oh yeah, I haven't been to a meetup in 5 years and I really regret that because I'm looking for a job now and I'm finding it really hard. I haven't invested in my network, um, and I should have been. And if I had, I probably would have found it a lot easier to get a job. And that's part of the reality, and that's what we want to make easier through community. And Eamon, who spoke on our first episode, actually is probably a great example of that. Like the way he embraced community and has grown as a result of that. Has it's great to see. But yeah, it's like we need to work together to convince people to embrace community a bit more, or see the value, but also like create good communities, right? Like, the Motaverse is just one example, but I fully believe that every profession should have a Motaverse kind of thing to enable them. And I'm not sure they do, but maybe one day, maybe like a positive future is that's what a positive future would look like. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone should surround themselves with community, both personally and professionally, right? Again, that's how you grow. That's how you find your support. And it's, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned, it's important to have that support network built before you need it, because by the time you need it, you're not in a good space to build it, not effectively, right? And it usually takes a couple of times of feeling that pain before people realize. And that's exactly what happened to me, right? I've been through the company layoffs, I've been through the firings and hiring process a couple of times in my career, and it's like, okay, I get it now. I understand why we need this.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen like people who have been more active in the community, when they do need a job, it seems like they get hired a lot more quickly because of the network and the time that they've invested in the network and the community. But yeah, thank you very much, Shawn. Any last comments before we finish up? Anything that we could have spoken about but didn't?
I mean, yeah, like how many cans of worms do you want to open, honestly? But no, I think this is great. This was really fun. This is my first podcast recording ever.
Awesome.
My first time speaking about anything. This was really fun. It's engaging. I hope to be back at some point in the future. Just reach out. Happy to talk about whatever. Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and I'm glad we've met. Yeah, I'll see you in the Motaverse.
Absolutely.